We like to believe that the conquest of space is a modern ambition, a dream powered by rocket fuel and silicon. Imagine this. Long before rockets, there was a ship on its way to the edge of the world. Caught in a whirlwind, it flew into the sky. For 7 days and 7 nights they sailed the ether, until they landed on a shining island in the void, a great luminary, the moon. This isn't a modern fantasy. It was written in the 2nd century by Lucian of Samosata. When Lucian looked up into the night sky, he didn't see a rock, he saw a battlefield. In his True History, he described a war between the King of the Moon and the King of the Sun. They fought over the colonization of the morning star, Venus. It was the first time humanity dreamt of extermination on a cosmic scale. For centuries, this dream remained a story of adventure. Jules Verne, A.G. Wells, they sent brave explorers into the unknown. But as the 20th century turned, the scale shifted. We stopped looking at the captain and started looking at the map. Writers like Asimov taught us, space wasn't just about survival. It was about systems, economics, politics. The sheer logistical nightmare of a galactic empire. By the 1970s, the hype was palpable. We were watching empires rise and fall on cinema screens. We were reading about grand strategies in paperbacks and comics. But watching was no longer enough. The passive observer wanted to become the active architect. We needed a way to touch the stars, to manage the economy, to build the fleets, to command the destiny of our species. It started here, with a hex grid, a rule book, and the will to conquer. (1974), a strange year. The Apollo program had just ended. The re-space age was on pause. On Earth, we faced an oil crisis. The idea of endless expansion suddenly felt impossible. But in a garage in Austin, Texas, a man named Howard M. Thompson decided that if we couldn't expand on Earth, we would do it on the kitchen table. This is Stellar Conquest, published by Metagaming Concepts, the same creative incubator that would later give us Steve Jackson and the microgame revolution. Before this, wargames were about history, refighting Waterloo or D-Day. But Thompson looked forward. He gave us an empty galaxy and told us to fill it. This is the DNA of the genre. Stellar Conquest introduced the tech tree before computers even knew what a tree was. You didn't just fight with what you had. You invented better tools to win. It was crude, yet ambitious. There were no 3D models, no plastic stands. Just stacks of cardboard, a galaxy in a Ziploc bag. But Howard Thompson knew that we wouldn't see the cardboard, we would see the Armada. The simulation happened in the mind. In this rare first issue of The Space Gamer, a magazine to support the growing sci-fi scene, Thompson admitted the harsh reality. Sales were only half of what he expected. The 1974 recession was crushing the dream. He blamed the economy, but there was another problem hidden in the fan letters. Fans were writing in, desperate for more record sheets. One player sent $10, a fortune back then, just to buy more paper to track his ships. But why was the paperwork so heavy? Because the players weren't just playing a game, they were engineering a reality. Look at the back cover from the 3rd issue. A blueprint for a dreadnought by Winchell Chung. It details missile silos, life support, engineering decks. In the footnotes, Chung admits the physics are impractical because the heat would evaporate the ship. But he drew it anyway. He calls it a respectable choice. Even in 1975, the rule of cool was already fighting against hard science. On the board, it was a cardboard square. In the player's mind, fueled by these magazines, it was a 50,000-ton Leviathan. In 1984, Avalon Hill, a big player in the tabletop genre, gave it a facelift. A real mounted board, a vivid blue map, actual colors. It was still just cardboard stacks, but at least now the galaxy didn't curl up at the edges. To conquer the stars, you had to master probability. In an article titled "The Escort Illusion," a player named Edward Cooper tore the game's economy apart. He proved mathematically that building cheap escort ships was statistically superior to building heavy cruisers. He argued about industrial efficiency and return on investment. The community was turning the game into an optimization puzzle. A review compared Stellar Conquest to its rival Star Force. Star Force was clean, abstract, telepathic. The reviewer said, "Stellar Conquest appeals to the Galactic Empire within us all." The rules were explicit. A dreadnought could wipe out 5 million people in a single turn, but eventually the paper galaxy ran out of space. Players hit the limits of the simulation. Larry Hester wrote that after turn 28, the game became confined, so they hacked it. They invented level 4 technology, terraforming, superweapons. They were modding the game with typewriters. They pushed back the mechanics as far as paper would allow, but tracking terraforming, industrial output, and ship blueprints on paper sheets, it was becoming work. The friction was unbearable. We needed a machine to carry the weight. In issue 31, the answer finally appeared. A new column, computer gaming. The era of the board was ending, and the era of the processor had begun. 1979, the end of a decade. The world was tense, neon lit, and on the edge. While the Cold War froze borders on Earth, a new frontier was opening on the screen. The wargame was migrating from the living room table to the microchip. No more dice, no more rulers. The computer began to shoulder the burden of the calculation, allowing players to focus and command. But the first person to conquer this digital galaxy wasn't a soldier. He was a corporate attorney named Doug Carlson. In an oral history for the Computer History Museum, Carlson explained why a lawyer would start coding. He wasn't trying to start an industry, he was just trying to escape the law books. He called it Galactic Empire. It began its life on the Radio Shack's TRS-80, released by Adventure International, as a crude display of text and blocky graphics. The Apple II version tried to fix that. It gave the game a much needed coat of paint, but don't let the colors fool you. Underneath the hood, the raw mathematical soul of the TRS-80 remained unchanged, but both versions perfected something board games struggled with: true hidden movement. In Stellar Conquest, you could see the enemy coming across the table. In Galactic Empire, the computer hid everything. The computer became the perfect referee. Finally, no more paper sheets, no more $10 refills. The game was simple. You had 999 years to conquer 20 planets. You drafted troops, you collected taxes. It could get tedious, because you were basically a glorified tax collector. To win, you had to fly to a planet, collect taxes, fly back to your homeworld, recruit new troops and fly back out. It wasn't strategy, it was a commute. It was a breakthrough, but it wasn't deep. It solved the accounting problem by making the player the accountant. But even with the graphical update, the game carried the ghost of its prior iteration, the limitation of the TRS-80. Doug Carlson ported the code line by line, meaning the Apple II version inherited the same strict memory limit. It was a game designed to fit into 16 kilobytes of RAM, less memory than a modern calculator. So he sliced the game into pieces. If you wanted to conquer, you played Galactic Empire. If you wanted to build an economy, you had to buy the sequel, Galactic Trader. Politics, Galactic Revolution. Today, these are all tabs in one menu. In 1980, there were 3 separate games. The Galactic Saga was the first attempt to simulate everything, just not all at once. Fun fact, the alien names like Tawala weren't random sci-fi gibberish. They were Swahili, memories from Carlson's time teaching in Botswana. He put his own life into the code. The saga became a hit, selling mostly through Scott Adams and Venture International. Seeing the potential, Carlson quit his job. In 1980, he took the rights back and founded Broderband, a legendary company. This wasn't just a studio. It was the spark of a software empire that would shape the 80s and 90s. A legacy so vast that deserves a documentary of its own one day. Galactic Empire proved it was possible, but it missed the soul of Stellar Conquest. Where was the research? Where was the colonization? Where was the Empire? To get that, we had to look away from Silicon Valley. We had to look down under. While Carlson was splitting the genre into pieces, 2 Australians were reaching for the stars.
Good morning, Australia. It's Friday, August the 16th, 1985. I'm Kerry-Ann Kennelly.
And I'm Gordon Elliott. Good morning and welcome. Home computer business, designs of successful games software have generated quick profits for those able to predict the market. Now an Australian group has made it into the lucrative US market after receiving a top award in the strategy and games field. Roger Keating and Ian Trout are here with games that adults play. Ian, Roger, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. What's the award you won?
To find the next evolutionary step, we have to travel to Sydney, Australia. Meet Roger Keating and Ian Trout. They weren't typical developers. Ian Trout ran a military bookstore. Roger Keating was his best customer. Keating was a programmer, frustrated with his US publishers. Trout was a historian, obsessed with logistics. Between shelves of World War II books, they decided to stop reading history and start coding it. They founded Strategic Studies Group, or simply called SSG, and their first mission was to fix the brain of the computer enemy. Galactic Empire was written in BASIC, easy to read, but slow. Keating knew that to simulate a galaxy, he needed speed. So he wrote Reach for the Stars in 6502 assembly. He spoke directly to the silicon. This was a technical masterpiece. While other games struggled to run one AI opponent, Keating's code was efficient enough to simulate 3 opponents simultaneously. In a December '83 issue of Computer Gaming World, reviewer Ed Curtis warned, at its veteran level, the computer can prove to be a deadly opponent. Finally, the galaxy fought back. Reach for the Stars looked austere, but open the manual and you see the difference to Galactic Empire. Look at page 4 of the manual. You invest in social structure and planetary environment. You weren't just filling a treasury, you were terraforming worlds to make them more efficient. It was a delicate ecosystem. The game was tuned to always give you almost enough resources, but never quite enough. The manual is full of logistics. Maintaining a colony wasn't free. The further you expanded, the harder it became. This was the first time a game punished you for expanding too fast. In Reach for the Stars, the galaxy was dark. You didn't know if the star system was empty or defended by a massive task force until you arrived. It turned exploration into a horror game. Every jump could be your last. It wasn't perfect. The review complained about natural disasters that wiped out colonies without warning. And a joke that the manual was written in a foreign language. Australian. A small bug in an otherwise revolutionary system. Galactic Empire gave us a form. Reach for the Stars gave us a brain. The genre was now intelligent. Reach for the Stars was a bridge. It took the complexity of Stellar Conquest and gave it the brain of a computer. But the galaxy was still silent. We had systems, we had the AI, but we didn't have culture yet. We didn't have a civilization.
I wonder how well the game sells in Japan. Sorry,
We've
guys.
made a number of sales
Actually,
there.
it sells quite well in Japan.
Yeah. Don't worry, they'll get it right second time.